Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to share with you how I made this set of cards with the new Sunny Studio Stamps Cheerful Daisy Stamp and Die Set. Now this stamp and die set is from the Not Too Shabby shop, and I have a code for 10% off your order that's going to be down in the description box below, so don't forget to grab that if you're going to place an order. So the first thing I'm going to do is make my card bases. I am making A2 top folding card bases. If you're curious about how to make your own card bases, there is a link down below in the description box to my blog where you'll get a free PDF that shares with you how to make your own card bases, where to cut, where to score, all that great stuff. And it gives different sizes as well, not just A2. You'll also notice that each time I score one of these, I am popping it into its own little bag. Now these bags I buy on Amazon, and these are great for kind of separating out my projects, and especially when I'm making card sets with a lot of die cuts, I just pop them into these separate bags, and that way when it's time to put them together, they've got all their little components in their own separate bag. Now another thing that I needed for my card today is a little wrap to wrap around my flowers. If you've seen the Hero Arts kit, they had a die in their kit that did something similar to this. However, I was not lucky enough to grab one of those while they were still available. So I'm making my own. I start with a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch square that I cut from craft cardstock, and I'm lining up that point at 1.75 inches. Then I am taking the opposite point, so the bottom point, and lining it up with that line where I'm going to score. That is going to give me a nice little angle to score on where it goes from the side all the way down to that bottom point. Now, this is great, and you can do as is, but you're going to have those little overhangs. It's not going to give you a nice angle on the top. So what I like to do is take this little template that I made and just draw two little marks on either side of it. And that is going to be where I'm going to chop off with my scissors. Now, if you want to make something like this, or you want to use the same exact format for a card you want to make, I do have this template over on my blog, and it gives all the instructions, and you can print that out over there completely for free. So once I have those two little corners cut off, I'm going to use my bone folder and just fold in both of those sides right towards the center. Now these are going to overlap a little bit. You want them to, because you want a place to put some glue to hold this thing together. But there you've got that nice little wrap for your bouquet of flowers. Now once I have that done and I have all my little wraps made, I'm not going to put them together yet. I'm going to leave them as is and pop them each into their own little separate bag with the card base. Again, you just want to keep adding to those little bags until you're ready to assemble. Now next up is stamping all the flowers. Now these have some stamp layering in them, so what I like to do is use my MISTI, and I have my paper cut in half from an 8.5 sheet of cardstock, so it measures 5.5 inches across by 8.5 inches tall. That is going to fit into my MISTI perfectly to where I can stamp on both sides, and I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. So I'm starting off with the very solid images, and I'm using the lightest colors of my inks. So for the leaves, I am always going to be using Lime Ricky from Catherine Pooler for this first layer. For the first layer on my flowers, I have a small and a large flower. I'm going to use a light color of ink, and I'm going to use several different colors. The first one I am using is Sweet 16. Once I have these first images stamped, I'm going to flip it over. Now once I have this flipped over, I'm going to line up that second image that goes on top, so your layered image. And I will do that for all 4 images, close the lid of my MISTI, and pick up all those images. Now I have both the bottom, where I can stamp, which is the solid portion, can flip my paper over and stamp the outline or the layered image on top of those with the darker color, and I don't have to move my stamps every time. So this goes super quick once you get those first layers down. For my second layer on the purple flowers, I used Flirty Fuchsia from Catherine Pooler, and then on the leaves, I am using Eucalyptus, which is a darker green ink. Now, once I stamped all those images, I'm also going to stamp the same exact thing on the bottom portion. So I'll end up with 4 flowers of the purple, 2 small and 2 large, and 4 leaves. That's going to be perfect because I'll put 4 flowers on each card and 4 leaves on each card. So I'm using 4 different colors and of inks here. 4 different color combinations of inks. So I'll end up with enough flowers and leaves for 4 cards. If you want to throw in a 5th color, do that and you'll have enough for 5 cards, and so on and so forth. Now it's just about going through the different color combinations and stamping these images. So the next color combination I'm using is It's a Girl, which is a very light pink ink. And then for the darker images, I'm using Party Dress, which is a darker pink. And I'm keeping it the same for the leaves. Lime Ricky for the lighter layer, Eucalyptus for the darker layer, just to keep it nice and simple and not get too confused. Then for the light layer on my blue flowers, I'm using It's a Boy ink. I'll flip this over once I get that light layer down, and I can stamp my darker layer, which is Something Borrowed from Catherine Pooler. And again, keeping the leaves the same. For the yellow inks, I am using Limoncello on the lighter layer of ink, and then I'll flip it over, and on that darker layer, I'm going to use Sauna ink. But can you see right here, I didn't clean off that image up top well enough from the blue ink. To avoid that, start with your lightest color and work towards your darkest. If you mess up like I did here, don't worry about it. Just cut your paper in half, flip that bottom piece over, and use the back side of the paper. Everything's still going to line up as long as you line up in the corners on the top and bottom, because we cut our paper to exactly the size of the inside of our Misty. Now once I have all of these colored with my flowers, it's time to add the centers. Now the centers, I have 2 different sizes, both the large and the small, and these are 3 layers. I should also mention that the leaves also have 3 layers, but I only chose to use 2 on my cards to keep it very simple and easy on myself. So for the solid portion of the flower, the first layer, I am using Desert Sand Memento in the dewdrop form. And this is a super, super light brown taupey color. So I'll go through all of my images and stamp those down. Now I've cut my paper in half so I can do each one and I don't have to do any flipping. And I've also started using acrylic blocks. So that's something to think about whenever you start stamping your images. Is it easier to use a stamp positioner, or is it easier to just use an acrylic block? The flowers and the larger images, I like to use my stamp positioner because I find them harder to line up. But with the smaller images like this, I find it easier to just use my acrylic blocks and kind of fly through these. Now my second layer on the center of the flowers, that ink is Toffee Crunch. Then for the third layer, I'm going in with an even darker brown in the Memento Dewdrop and using Rich Cocoa to fill in all those centers of the flowers. Now, like I said, there are 2 centers, one larger and one smaller for the coordinating flowers, and I did the exact same thing on both flowers, exact same color combination. Now in the Cheerful Daisies die set, you get 1 large flower die cut, 1 small flower die cut, and then the 2 leaves, each going kind of the opposite direction. That's another reason that it's great to stamp like this, because each little paper that you cut can fit one of the dies. So you can layer these up, all 4 dies on one sheet of paper. I just use painter's tape. This is a delicate painter's tape to hold them in place and run them through my die cutting machine. Once I have them out, then I pop them into a little bowl off to the side of my desk, and that's where they're going to stay until I have all of the flowers cut out and ready to go. Then I can sort through them. So what I have now is 2 of the larger flowers of each color, 2 of the smaller flowers of each color, and then 4 sets of 4 leaves for each card. So here's where those bags really come in handy, because this is a lot of die cut pieces and it can get overwhelming and confusing, and you don't know what you have. You don't know kind of what colors that you've already used and put together. You don't want to end up with two colors on the same card. This is a really easy way to sort them out and pop them into the bags so you know that you have a good variety on each card. So what I do is take 4 of the leaves, then I just choose 2 small flowers and 2 larger flowers, making sure that I don't double up on colors, and pop them into a bag. Super simple. And I continue to do that until I have all of my bags filled up. Now, if you're doing more of these, like a really large bulk order, or you want to use this for like a class, say, then you might have a lot more die cuts, and this is really going to come in helpful. But here you can see I kind of picked and chose and kind of played around with the color combinations, so I didn't have too much of the same on each and every card. So here I put some back, chose a few different ones, and just kind of played around with it. Once I was done, I had 4 cards. That other one, that 5th one, is actually one I did beforehand, and I didn't end up putting that one together because I did something a little different with the leaves and it just didn't end up looking right. Now, before I move on to putting these together, I do want to add a little bit of stenciling to those card bases. I am using the stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. It's the brick stencil in 6x6 form. I'm using Party Dress ink, and I'm using my Amazon blending brushes. I'll go ahead and overlay that stencil from a card on a card base. So I'm just going to pop that card base out of the little bag, add some stenciling to it. This is a really easy way to stencil with these brushes because it goes on smooth. What I'm doing here is starting in the center and then going lighter towards the edges. This is just going to give me a really nice gradient, but I'm only using one ink pad. And I chose a color from the flowers so everything would kind of coordinate and blend together on the finished card. Now, if you wanted to, you could use different colors on each card base. That would be a really fun touch. I didn't feel like cleaning my brush off each and every time. I was being a little bit lazy, so I just used Party Dress on each and every one. I have other brushes, but they haven't been cleaned in a while, just full disclosure. So I just went with my pink brush and did that. Now it's time to start putting these cards together. As you can see, I just grab a bag and dump all of its contents out, and then it's time to start putting everything together on this one card. So I don't feel overwhelmed with all my different pieces and trying to get all these cards together. I just work on assembling one card at a time. There are a million different ways to put together a card set. This is what works for me, and maybe it works for you, but maybe something else works for you too, and that's okay. So what I'm going to do is put together my little wrap, my bouquet wrap, and all I did with that was use a little bit of scrapbook.com adhesive, the very thin 1/8 of an inch adhesive, on one of the edges, and then just wrap the two sides and folded them together. Super simple and easy to do. I like the tape adhesive for that because it's nice and quick and I don't have to hold anything in place. Now it's time to put together the bouquet inside that little wrap. So I'm starting with the 2 largest flowers and I'm gluing those down straight to that wrap. I'm using liquid adhesive here just because I like that little bit of playtime. I am one of those people that has a million different types of adhesive. I like to use them for different things. And we're going to add another different type of adhesive right here, because I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to those 2 smaller flowers that are going to be in front of the larger ones. I added foam adhesive to the back of those 2, and I'm just going to layer them up right over the top of those other 2 flowers. So it's going to look like a little bouquet. Now it's time to stick it in the leaves. I really didn't have any rhyme or reason to where I stuck these. I just added a little bit of liquid adhesive to the back and tucked them behind flowers wherever I thought it needed a little something extra. So here down at the bottom, I felt there was a little bit of an opening where you could see inside that wrap. So I just stuck a leaf there. Then on the back, I feel like there's a little space there. So I'm going to tuck a leaf in there. It really is going to be different on each and every card where I tuck the leaves in. It's just about where the flowers were placed and where I feel like it needs a little something extra. For all of these leaves, though, I did use liquid glue. None of them have dimension on them. I just used the liquid glue to glue them directly down. Once I had the bouquets put together, I went ahead and set these off to the left-hand side, and I'm just going to stack them on top of each other from this point on. I can go ahead and put my bags away and reuse them on another project. So one thing that I didn't talk about is what I do with my sentiments. And sometimes I don't have a plan for them. I have an idea for a design for a card and I go with it and I just leave my sentiment for last and then I figure out what I want to do from there. Sometimes that works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. It just is about playing around with the design. And for these cards, I wasn't sure if I wanted to stamp a sentiment on or add a die cut sentiment. I ended up going with the die cut sentiment. So I set my cards off to the side. I die cut 4 hugs dies from a Heavy Doodle die set, and I added those onto a flag banner. The flag banners are white cardstock, and the die cut sentiments are black cardstock. So I get some really nice contrast there, and it really helps that sentiment pop out. I used liquid adhesive to glue those down, centered them up, and the top and the bottom hang off, so it adds just that little bit of extra interest. Once I had all the sentiments put together, it's time to assemble all the cards. Now for this, I'm going to change it up a little bit on every card the way I orientate the little bouquet of flowers. Some I'll have leaning towards the right, others I'll have leaning towards the left. I'm using liquid adhesive to put these down. So when I make card sets, a lot of times I give them as gifts. And when I give cards as gifts, I do not like to have to worry about if the person that is sending these in the mail is going to have to add extra postage. So I don't like to add a ton of dimension. And really, on this card, it's only one layer. That's all there ever is on this card is one layer of dimension. So these are going to go through the mail fine. They're not going to need hand canceled or anything like that. And they're not heavy, so they don't require that extra postage. So if you give card sets as gifts, just keep that in mind. You don't want, or include the stamps if you're going to do that. Include the stamps as part of the gift. But that is it. That is the card set. Super simple to put together once you get all the pieces cut out and stamped. And I absolutely love the way these turned out. Don't forget that coupon code down in the description box below. You'll also find the complete supply list down there. And if you want the template for that little wrap for the bouquet, that's going to be over on my blog where you can download it there. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to do that now. Thanks for watching and happy crafting, everyone.